Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Tiara. Today we're gonna do something a little bit different. I I've been thinking that I'd like to make a lemon meringue pie because it's a nice summer dessert, I feel. And my friend Gwen, hi Gwen, sent me this recipe for this sour cream pie crust. And I don't know, it sounds kind of weird, but I mean, I figured let's try it together and see how it goes. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make the sour cream pie crust, and I'm also going to make the normal pie crust that I use when I bake pies, and then we'll try them both out and see what the difference is in taste and texture and things like that. So I'll put the link to the pie crust recipe, the sour cream pie crust recipe, inside the video description. So if you want to go check it out, you can do that. But we'll get started right now. So the recipe that she sent to me is for a double pie crust. So if you were making like an apple pie or a pie with a crust over it, or if you're making like two pumpkin pies or two single pies, and you wanted two crusts. Since I never made this before and I don't know how it tastes and I don't know if I'm gonna like it, I have decided I'm only gonna make half of the recipe and make one single crust uh, when I do this, just so that I can kind of test it out. But when I make my own pie crust, I will make the full double crust recipe. So there will be more, about the same ingredients, but more volume of ingredients. So, all right. We have here a stick of butter, which I believe is 113 grams, and that is cut up into cubes. I've got 130 grams or 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I've got half a teaspoon of salt, and oh, this is unsalted butter, don't forget. And I have a teaspoon of sugar, and then I have a 1/4 cup of sour cream. And it says on the recipe, full fat, not light sour cream. So this is full fat, not light sour cream. So we'll get started. So basically, when you're making any kind of pie crust, you're gonna whisk all of the dry ingredients together as you normally do. All right, so let's get started. We'll go ahead and whisk the flour, the sugar, and the salt together. You want a little bit of salt in your pie crust, but not too much. So here's my chilled butter. Um, what I wound up doing is I wound up cutting this into cubes and then throwing it back in the fridge. Now remember, I live in Las Vegas where it is warm outside, and I'm basically, I'm recording in my kitchen, which faces the window to the backyard. So it's sunny, and even though the AC is on, it's still warm. So even as I was cutting it, it started to melt a little bit. So I popped it back in the fridge to keep it cool. You want cold butter when you're working with pie crust. You don't want it to melt because the cubes of butter are going to give the crust that nice flaky taste that we all love. So I'm going to put this in here. All right. I'm going to take my ring off because I don't want to smoosh butter into my ring. So, all right, and then we're just going to incorporate this with our hands. And basically, all that you do when you're mixing flour and butter together is kind of squeeze it so that you're rubbing the dry ingredients into the butter. The other reason that you want your butter to be cold is because you are going to work with your hands. I know there are some recipes out there that say, you can do this in like a food processor, but I think it's more fun, and It's better to work with your hands for something like this so you can feel the texture of it and, work with it more. I'm just incorporating all of this butter into this flour, or I'm incorporating all of this flour into this butter, whichever way you want to look at it. Mary's having a snack behind me. Hi, Mary. I always wind up recording these in the afternoon because I work kind of East Coast hours, so I finish between like 3 and 3:30, so when I record it's, around 4 in the afternoon, which is a good doggy snack time. Alright, now, so the recipe says that once you've incorporated the flour and the butter, you can see it's a nice crumbly consistency, that you add the sour cream in and mash it in with a fork. So I'm going to wash my hands really quickly since I'm done touching this, and then I'm going to grab a fork because, of course, I forgot to put a fork over here. And then we'll put the sour cream into this dough. Alright, so let's add this sour cream in. So I guess this is using sour cream instead of cold water, is what's happening here. Now this recipe said don't worry about overworking it, so I guess I won't worry about overworking it. Alright. I think that's about as incorporated as it's gonna get. Now I will grab silicone pie sheet and a little bit of flour and stick. It's interesting. You can definitely smell the sour cream, which I guess makes sense. Alright. So since it said not to worry about overworking it, I'm gonna incorporate this sour cream a little bit more. This is a very wet dough. Alright. So now I'm going to form it into a disc. And trying to get all of the sides as even as possible so that it will roll out nicely later. Grab some of these little remnants and stick them on the bottom. And just sprinkling some flour over both sides so it doesn't stick. And then I'm going to wrap this in cling film and put it in the fridge and work on making the other pie dough. So I'll be right back. Alright, now we're going to make the pie crust that I normally make. So this is going to be a big shocker to probably a lot of people I know, because anybody who's eaten one of my pies has always been like, oh my gosh, Tiara, the crust is so buttery, it's so good. The crust that I make is vegan, it's dairy free. There is no butter in it at all. I know. Shocker, right? Anyways, I actually use Crisco vegetable shortening, the butter flavored one. So that's where some of the butter flavor comes in. But I mean, I learned how to make pie crust with Crisco, and so that's the way I've done it forever. And you know, why change now? Maybe I'll convert to sour cream pie crust. Who knows? But anyways, so we'll go ahead and put this together. This is the full recipe, whereas I made only half the recipe of the sour cream pie crust. So there's a little bit more. So we've got 2 cups of flour, and that is 240 grams. I misspoke earlier when I said that a cup was 160 or whatever I said. 1 cup is 120. 2 cups is 240 grams. I have 2/3 of a cup of the vegetable shortening. I forgot to weigh it. I have no idea how many grams. I have 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I've got some ice water because I'm going to use 4 to 8 tablespoons of ice water depending on how like chunky and you don't want really wet dough. So you just use as much water as you need and incorporate more water if it starts to get drier. So go ahead and whisk together the sugar and the salt. Then I'm going to put in the shortening, and I like to put it in the freezer a little bit before I start because it tends to melt faster than butter, I feel. And then we'll start out with 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons. Alright, and then just like with the other dough that we made, we're just going to rub this together with our hands. Tell this is pretty dry, so I'm going to add 2 more tablespoons of water. Maybe, if I can get some of this off my hands. Because you want it to be like a light crumbly texture, but you don't want some of the crumbs to be just flour. Like, I don't know if you can see this, where it's just like a lot of little pieces of flour. Alright, starting to come together nicely, but there's still a little bit of really dry bits on the bottom. I dedicate this pie crust to my friend Warren, who recently started baking, and said that he was not yet ready for pie crust. And Warren, I want you to know, I believe in you. I believe you're ready for pie crust. So, go do it. Go do it, bro. And then tell me how it went. Alright. So, for me, 7 tablespoons of water was good. But that's why you added a little bit at a time. If I had added more, it would be too wet. And that's something I'm kind of really weirded out by / concerned about the other, or sour cream dough, because it is very wet and very sticky, whereas this dough is not wet and sticky. So I'm going to break this in half, about, yeah. And then I will form both of these into discs like I did with the sour cream dough. And you can just use your fingertips to kind of smooth away those little cracks so that it'll roll out smoothly later. But I can already see that there's a difference between this pie dough and the sour cream one. This is drier, and you can see it kind of doesn't really melt together the same way that the sour cream one did. All right, I'm gonna wrap these up in cling film like I did with the other dough, and then we're gonna let everything chill in the fridge. You can let it chill for, I would say, at least half an hour to 45 minutes, but you can also do it overnight. You can make this ahead of time. You just don't want it to be more than like a day. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap these in cling film and let them chill, and then we'll come back and we'll roll out both of the doughs and see what the difference is with rolling them. And then I will do a little bit of baking with them and see what the difference is in taste once they're baked and how they bake. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so when I pulled the pie crust out of the fridge after about an hour, there are a couple of things I noticed immediately. One, as you can see, this is the sour cream pie crust dough, and this is the regular pie crust dough. And there's definitely a size difference here. Another difference is that this is very hard. Like, it's just, like, I can push into the regular pie dough, and you can kind of see there's a dent where I've pushed. But I'll push equally as hard into this pie dough, and there's not really a dent. The instructions said I should leave it out for about 10 minutes once I pull it out of the fridge to let it soften a little bit in order to roll it out. So I'll put this to the side, and we'll go ahead and roll out the regular pie crust first. Some flour on the rolling pin. All right. Sprinkle a little flour on top of that. I'm going to start from the center and just roll it out. It's good every once in a while to lift the dough up and make sure it's not sticking to the silicone mat or whatever you're using. And if it is, you just want to put a little bit more flour. Sometimes what the easiest thing to do is sprinkle flour and then just gently roll it over so that you know that the bottom is floured. The edges don't matter because either you're going to cut the crust down when you put it in a tin, or you'll fold up the edges and make it look nice, and so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so that's ready to go. This is a little softer, but still kind of hard in the center, so I'll let it sit for another minute. I'm not going to bake a full pie because that just seems kind of silly for this particular test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some rounds and I'm going to make some tartlets. And so what we'll do is we'll blind bake some of the tart shells, which means that we put it in without any kind of filling. And then we'll see how they bake and how they look after that. And then what I'll do is I'll bake a couple with like a quick blueberry filling that I made. And usually you wouldn't bake a tart with the filling in it, but I just want to kind of get an idea of the difference and how these things bake. the regular pie crust versus the sour cream pie crust. So I'm going to grab some cutters and my tart tin, and then we'll put some of these in, and hopefully by the time we're done with all of that, the sour cream, notice I keep trying to say sourdough, the sour cream dough will be ready to roll out. It's already starting to feel a little softer, so hopefully. All right, so I have pulled out my tart tin and my circular cutter. So when you are doing things like tarts, um, where you're going to line something, a good idea is to take the cutter and kind of put it over and see that it's bigger. So the next size down I have, you can see that fits right at the edges. You always want to cut a little bit more because it's going to take up more room as you push the crust down into the tin. And you want to have a little room on the edges because as you blind bake something like this, it is going to shrink. So I am going to cut these. I've preheated the oven to 375, and this is starting to feel like I should be able to roll it out after this. So let me just cut a few of these circles. Just gonna set them on top for a second. Just gonna grab the rest of this dough and stick it back in the fridge when I'm done with this. So I'm just going to press these in very gently. And here's a nice tip. You can take some of the extra dough and kind of pinch it in your fingers and then use that to smush the dough into place into your tart. And the reason you do that is because the dough doesn't really stick to itself, and you will be more likely to tear it with your fingers than you will with the little piece of dough in your hands. So it's already warm here today, so I'm going to try to hurry up and do this so I can stick these in the fridge because this dough has been out for quite a while. Alright, so this is feeling softer now, so I think it should be okay to roll. Okay. So I rolled out the other pie crust to about 10 inches. This said it could be 14 to 16 inches, so we'll see. Still, the edges are soft. As you can see, the edge kind of rolled away, but the center is still. Guys, why do you always eat when I'm doing stuff? You never eat any other time. I guess because I'm in the kitchen, they have to be in the kitchen too. And for them, eating or being in the kitchen means eating, so. Okay, so I've rolled this out kind of unevenly, but it is what it is. So I'm going to grab the pie tin, or the tart tin again, and then we'll cut some of these out. This is still pretty thick. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take away this excess. I'll roll these a little thinner so that they're more the same consistency of the other ones. Now that it's melted, it's kind of, I don't know, the texture is interesting. It's much softer and stickier than the other crust. So I'm going to let these set in the fridge for about 15 minutes just to let them get nice and cool. And then what I'll do is I will take a fork and I'll poke holes into the bottom, and that keeps the crust from like blowing up as it bakes, which is something that you do when you blind bake. Or you could use like beans or rice or something like that. But I'm just going to poke them just to see how that goes. And then, or maybe I'll do half and half. I'll decide in 15 minutes when I pull these back out of the fridge. So we'll see you then. All right, so I reread the very longish blog that went along with the recipe for the sour cream pie crust, and she said it didn't really do well with blind baking and suggested to freeze the dough and line it and put weights in it to bake it. So I've done that for half of everything, just because I still really want to test it out and see how it does. So for half, I put in tin foil and baking weights. And then the other half, I've taken a fork and I've punctured the bottoms. And so these will go into the oven at 375 for 10 to 12 minutes. And then we'll pull them out. And I'm going to see how they look and maybe give one a taste. But I'm really going to save most of the stuff until Dan comes home from work, and then we'll give him a blind tasting to see what he thinks of both, and if he likes both, because I'm kind of worried that maybe I'm like letting my, it's not like prejudice, but like my, I'm kind of wary of this recipe. The dough feels weird. I've it's just, the texture is strange. So I think, okay, my bias. I'm kind of worried that I'm being a little biased about the sour cream pie crust. So it would be nice for Dan to try both without knowing which one is which and see if he likes them both, see which one he thinks is better. And also, I'm not going to eat everything because I'm going to fill some of them with some blueberry filling that I made just to kind of see what they taste like filled. And so we'll come back and take a look at them really quick in 10 to 12 minutes when they're done. And then I will put some more into the oven and bake them with filling. So we'll try that as well. Okay? All right, I pulled these out of the oven, and there are some big differences that I can notice immediately. One of the first things I noticed is that even though I punctured the bottom of the tarts for the sour cream dough, it cooked really weird. So it kind of really shrank, and the middle kind of puffed up. I'm going to take the baking beads out of here and take a look at everything else. Being very careful because they're hot and I have a tendency to burn myself. Every year my mother-in-law gives me what she calls the "Don't Burn Yourself" tiara gift, and sometimes they help and sometimes they don't. Okay, so these four are my normal crust, and then these four are the sour cream crust. So as you can see, the ones that I punctured with a fork and the ones I put the baking beans into, all came out pretty nice. And like I said, the ones that I excuse me, the ones that I punctured at the bottom kind of melted, The other ones kept their shape, but the bottom is kind of soggy. So I don't know if you can see that. That's the sour cream one. And here's one of the regular pie crusts. So it's got a very different kind of sheen. I didn't make this thin. It kind of just melted in on itself. Here's a different one. So you can still see there's kind of meltage at the bottom, though not as much. So maybe this one was kind of thicker. So I think I'll save some of these for Dan. I'm not going to make him eat the weird ones, but I'll save these two that kind of kept their shell shape. This one is very soft too. So one of them started to brown, and one of them's not really brown at all, but is very soft. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep those. And I'm just going to taste it to see what it tastes like. So even though it kind of melted, it's very greasy. Pat off some of the extra grease. Well, the part at the bottom that's crispy is actually very crispy and nice and flaky. It's got a nice butter taste. I don't smell or taste the sour cream anymore. It's not bad. I think probably if it had been like an actual pie, that would work out just fine. And like I said, after rereading the blog for the recipe, she did say that these did not do well with blind baking. So I'm trying not to hold that against it. But now I know not to blind bake this sour cream dough. And I know these will taste fine, but I mean, it's here anyways, so let's eat it. This one is nice and well baked. Mmm, crunchy, buttery, despite being vegan, and delicious. All right, I don't need to eat all of that, even if I want to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the muffin tin, and I'm going to do the same thing. I cut out some slightly larger than these pieces of dough. I'm going to put them in the muffin tin so they're a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to put the blueberry compote that I made into them. And I'm going to bake them for like 20 to 25 minutes and see how those come out. So I will do that. And then we'll be back to take a look at them. And then we'll put them in the fridge and we'll set. And when Dan comes home from work, we'll give them the ultimate taste test. Okay, so I've pulled these out of the oven. I may have overfilled them a little bit, you know, not thinking about the fact that the crust does shrink a little bit when you bake it. Um, the ones on the right are the regular pie dough, and the ones on the left are the sour cream pie dough. Um, Cook them for about 20 minutes. I can see right now that the outside is golden and they are done. I'm not going to touch them right now because the pan is very hot. I just pulled it out of the oven. Um, so I'm going to let them cool and I'll pull them out. I'll cover them once they're cool and put them in the fridge. And then when Dan gets home, you'll get a look at them and he'll get to look at them for the first time. And we'll give them a try and we'll see how everything tastes. Hi.
Hi.
Do you have a good day at work?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready to taste some pie crusts?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened today was I made two different pie crusts. I made the pie crust that I normally make, and then I made this recipe that Gwen sent to me, which was a sour cream pie crust.
Okay.
And so what I did was I cooked some shells by themselves, and then I cook, and then in a couple of the shells, oh, you know what, here, you should get more. I get the extras. Um, I just filled them afterwards because I blind baked them like this, and then these ones I baked with the filling inside of them. And so I'm not going to tell you which is which, but I thought maybe you could try them and see what you think of each of these. And so these three are the same kind of shell, and these three are the same kind of shell. So
Okay.
why don't you try just the shell by itself first without the filling and see what you think.
Well, the problem is I'm always um like I love everything that you make, so I don't know what to say always. Mm.
Cracks on your arm.
Yeah.
What?
Mm. It's hard to because I don't know what that sour cream is going to show up as. If I was just tasting those two, I would guess that that one was the sour cream, the lighter one. But I'll try these ones. You said these are the ones you baked with the filling in.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the filling is really excellent too.
It's blueberries. I know you like blueberries, so
Yeah.
there you go.
They're each really good in their own different ways, I think. Let me see here.
Those are the same as the shells, but then I put the filling in afterward.
Okay. So I think that the that these ones on the right, if I had to guess, were the sour cream ones. Um,
What's the reason that you say that?
because they have kind of a different something going on than maybe I feel like I'm used to.
Mhm.
It's a little bit, it's very kind of light and fluffy, whereas the other ones are kind of more substantial and don't have that sort of, I don't know, there's just kind of a little extra flakiness to it as
Mhm.
opposed to like crumbliness that
Right.
I think works really well.
Okay. Well, yeah, those are the sour cream ones.
Yeah.
So, is there one you like better or?
Hmm. I actually like the sour cream ones. They're both good. I definitely think that the best one of these three versions is the one with it baked inside of it already,
Mhm.
because that's definitely, I think it all works together really well.
Yeah. So when I got this recipe, uh, it did say that it doesn't work well with blind baking, and blind baking is what I did with these and the ones that I filled in afterwards, just to kind of see how it was. And there are less of these shells because some of them just kind of melted. So, and you can kind of see at the
Yeah.
bottom where it's kind of, like see-through almost. And I think that's the extra fat in the sour cream that you're adding along with the butter that does that. But yeah, you can definitely see, like even looking at the tarts uh, side by side, this is the one with the sour cream in it. It made it almost kind of like a puff pastry instead of a regular tart pastry.
Yeah.
So it does have a different texture and it is like very flaky versus like kind of more crumbly of the more traditional pie crust. And it was interesting. It was interesting to work with too because it didn't cook the same or didn't bake the same way. But I mean, yeah, they are both tasty in their own different ways. I think maybe I would try this with a different kind of thing, like a larger tart, where I could bake stuff in it. Because usually when you make tarts, you blind bake the crust first and then you fill them in later.
Hmm.
So, but anyways, thank you for tasting all the things.
Oh, it's so hard.
I really appreciate it. And now that we're done with this, you can eat all of the rest of these if you want, or we can figure out what to do with them.
Like, I'll eat them. That They
Yeah,
will be inside of me. So
yeah.
that's what will be happening.
So I think because I do have a bunch of pie crusts now, what I'm gonna do for our for next video is make a lemon meringue pie. So
Sounds good.
I think I'll work on that, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.